Hello and welcome to our podcast, Das Seriensprechzimmer, our podcast about TV shows. We are talking about the new Apple TV show Schmigadoon that is going to air on July 16th. Apple TV was really nice to provide us with an interview with Keegan-Michael Key to his musical role in Schmigadoon. To honor the privacy of the other interviews, I'm going to re-record the questions with my own voice and add the answers from Keegan-Michael. English is not my mother tongue, so please forgive any mistakes or mispronunciations. Have fun with the interview. There you go. Can you speak to the appeal of having this parody of Golden Age musicals set in the 1940s and how it adds to the dynamic of the show?
Yeah, sure. I think that it adds to the dynamic of the show because we're dealing with a really fun fish out of water story. And what we do is we get to see this lovely juxtaposition, this generational juxtaposition between the way musicals were treated and the way people were portrayed in those musicals, and this contemporary couple being tossed into this situation and how they're seeing the world. So they're just going, sorry, what? I love the fact that Cecily's character, who is a great maven of musicals. So she knows all the rules, but she also has to make comments every now and again about the fact that the women are written so one-dimensionally, and the fact that, you know, somebody would turn away a pregnant girl as opposed to taking in her and helping her. And that the way that some of the things that are reflected in generationally, we're still dealing with. And some things seem so antiquated at the same time. And I think it's one really wonderful dimension of the piece, so that we can laugh kind of at the innocence of what they're doing, but also there's a bit of danger to the way they see the world, and that there's this actual evolution that takes place during the piece. It's really fun, you know.
What is the biggest challenge on working on a musical like Schmigadoon?
Well, the biggest challenge for me was that I play the character, I play a character who absolutely hates musicals. He just despises them. He doesn't like the musicals. He doesn't understand them. He doesn't want to be a part of this. And I love musicals. In real life, I absolutely adore them. And so the biggest challenge for me, and I was from the director. The director would Keegan, cut. You can't do this, and you can't stop tapping your foot, and you're smiling too. Stop smiling. And I was like, I'm sorry, was I smiling? It's like, because they would perform in front of us. They would perform these huge numbers right in front of our very eyes. I'm just going, it's like, you got to stop smiling. So it was a really great acting challenge. It's the hardest acting challenge of my career, I think. So that was the biggest challenge for me. And then I would also like to say a shout out to all the organization that people put together for this project being shot in the middle of COVID. And that we got to have this wonderful product come out, this wonderful thing come out of it. And so, you know, but the biggest challenge was not smiling at this wonderful music.
When Melissa breaks up with your character, Josh learns about loss. Do you think that the show is about fear of commitment more than it is about true love?
I think it's, well, that's a really good question. I think it's actually more about the fear of why you wouldn't commit, right? Because it's like, what is it that you're really afraid of? Are you afraid of showing your emotion, showing a vulnerability, giving yourself over to another? That's the thing. The thing is that the lack of commitment is because there's something underneath it that you're resisting. And the thing is, that thing that you're resisting is the thing that will free you. That's what I think is the interesting part of the theme, that the equation seems antithetical. The equation seems the opposite of what it really is. Like, well, no, I'm protecting myself. Don't do that. Don't do that. Jump out there and give of yourself is I think one of the great themes. Because otherwise we can't get to the second thing you said, is you're not going to get to true love. You're just not going to have it. If you don't take this step, you're not going to have it. If you stay in your comfort zone, life will stay as usual. If you step outside of your comfort zone, miracles can happen.
Do you have a particular musical that you like?
I think that's a really good question. Boy, good questions. The biggest difference would be is trying to keep embrace a simplicity about playing the role, which is, and also embracing the well, I guess it's the same thing. I was going to say not doing too much, which is simplicity. There is this sense that as I get older, I should remember that sometimes you have to just remember, I am enough. Just keep telling yourself, I am enough. I am enough. And then just say the words, just say the lines. It's funny. One of my heroes, Robert De Niro, he always will say, he says, do nothing, do nothing. If you're trying, it looks like acting. If you do nothing, you come through, or the character can come through, especially for a project like this where the writing is so exceptional. The writing is so exceptional that it's more about riding the wave of the writing than it is about you trying to give it something or zhuzh it. And especially for Josh, who just really is like, I just want to figure out how to get the hell out of here. And the more simple you make it, the more simple you make his desires, the better you can juxtapose all these other people. And they're very simple human desires, where everybody else has these kind of grandiose desires and thoughts, and that's why they're singing. So that was kind of my approach, was trying to find, just get simple, feel these things organically, and that simplicity will come.
Is there a particular musical that you enjoy the most?
Yeah, well, my favorite musical is a musical called Sweeney Todd, that was written by Stephen Sondheim. And it's interesting because it's the opposite of Schmigadoon. It's very dark, but it's my favorite musical because the music is so gorgeous. Most everything Sondheim wrote was gorgeous. There is a sense of yearning that you share with the characters in the piece. Not all the characters, but the young couple, the ingenue and the juvenile, the two that this couple that are trying to come together and maybe start a life together, and it gets crushed. But the thing is, you need that darkness to make the light look exquisite, to make the light attractive. And there's something about musicals like Les Mis and Sweeney Todd where there's this unrequited love that affect me, that really affect me deeply. And I love fun musicals. Like I was in a musical called The Prom, which I enjoyed very much. And it's a great uplifting tale, and I love an uplifting tale. And Schmigadoon is an uplifting tale about evolution, evolving and growing in love. But there's something about Sweeney Todd and the song, and in particular, the song Pretty Women, it's one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard, and one of the greatest lyrics I've ever heard in my life. Pretty women, proof of heaven while you're living. Pretty women. Might be the greatest lyric I've ever heard in a musical. I just think it's exquisite. Yeah.
Your song reminds me of Nothing's Gonna Hurt You from Sweeney Todd.
Yes, it does. That's very good.
Schmigadoon has this classic humor of parodies like Naked Gun, Hot Sauce. Is there still place for this humor in a time of political correctness?
You know, it's interesting. That's an interesting question. My partner, I have a comedy show in the United States called Key and Peele, and my partner Jordan used to always say, his big thing was, as long as you can make anything funny, if you can make something funny, you can parody or satire anything, even in this environment that we're living in now, political correctness. You should still be able, if the craft is there and the concept of the sketch is sound, or what we used to say is, if the kernel is earnest, if it's sound, then people will go, oh, especially in our country. Like in our country, we used to do a sketch where Jordan would play President Obama, and I would play a gentleman by the name of Luther, who was his anger translator, because Obama never gets, he always holds down his emotions. And I would express his emotions for him. And in our country, when Jordan developed that sketch, we felt it worked so well. And then we got proof that it worked well when, the political climate in my country, Republicans will watch that sketch and go, that's clever. That's good. I mean, we got to admit that's funny. Got to admit it's funny. Then you're doing something right. So if that can work, then that kind of humor, that kind of base humor or crass humor, if you're doing it within the context of a bigger frame, like in Schmigadoon, I just happen to be in the midst of this humor that would happen in a 1940s comedy. So it makes perfect sense in that context. So I think if you're careful and respectful of the subject matter that you're mocking or parroting. To this day, even in this climate, anything can be funny at any time.
Back in the 40s, the Broadway scene was different than today. The series is almost a love letter to the golden age musicals. What would you like to see in today's musical that is borrowed from the earlier generations?
I think a lot of what I'd like to see is actually, I guess this applies to cinema too. There's a work ethic that wherein there was a lack of shock. So nowadays, I think people try very often to shock us, but it's not necessarily clever or humorous. And sometimes, now the thing is, what I would say, thankfully, is where you find that usually, or I'm sorry, I should say it this way. Musical theater is usually pretty much devoid of that. Very often the humor in musical theater is not arch or dirty, or it usually is more polished and thought through. Of course, it's because it's a play. So you can take as long as you want to write a play. Nobody's telling you there's a deadline here and we have to have this done at this time. You can ruminate and consider how you want your musical to unfold. And this is something Cinco Paul, the creator of Schmigadoon, he's been working on this for years, like 23 years, I think he's been working on this in some form or another. So it's brought to us, it's come to fruition as this wonderful, thoughtful, mildly provocative piece. And so I'm beating around the bush, Mirska, because I don't know how to answer your question. Because I feel that the musical as an art form isn't broken. I think the musical is one of those things that is elevated very often in the right way. Sometimes we exploit what we're trying to condemn, and that's too bad. But I think I think as an art form it works quite well.
Thank you for trying to answer the question.
Yeah, I'm just going, well, what do I want to see in it? I want to see still what I see in the 40s and 50s musicals. There's the play on words, or wordplay, I should say. Wordplay in songs is still clever. The way that they're thinking about the journey of the lyrical content to get to a thing, or the way that you set up a thematic, you set up a theme at the beginning of a song and it plays through the song and you explore that theme. We're still seeing that. We've been seeing that happen in musicals since its advent, and I'm happy for it. The form is, I think, still very pure.
Thank you so much for the interview. You guys, check out Schmigadoon. It airs on Apple Plus TV on July 16th, 2021. And in my review, I gave it 8 from 10 points. Until next time, bye-bye.